Many people are confused about how the global tariff war that has recently begun and is heating up, but how will that impact you personally? Will prices go up as one and done, or is this the start of the hyperinflation? But what if I told you that we have history that can be used as a guide to help you see what is coming? And maybe this time is different, but what I see is that patterns repeat every time there is a currency regime shift. And in this case, the pain of a credit bubble popping after massive money printing and deregulations ushered in. First beginning the transition from a sound money, gold and silver system to a fiat paper money standard that encouraged fiscal irresponsibility and risk-taking. And second, ultimately, ushering in the massive wealth transfer of the Great Depression. If I'm right, and this is a repetition of history, then we have a solid guide for what is most likely to happen and what we can do for protection and prosperity. I'm going to show you another reason I believe an overt gold confiscation is a real possibility. But the big question is, how is the 2025 President Trump tariffs different than the 1930s Smoot-Hawley Tariffs? And what do the patterns tell us to do? Now, we've seen the back and forth of tariffs that President Trump has slapped on roughly 60 countries, including China and the European Union. And while he's postponed some of those for the next 90 days, not on China, and China is not backing down. So while some countries are trying to appease President Trump, frankly, others are retaliating with a tit-for-tat global trade war. Global markets are crashing, and with all the uncertainty and credit liquidity drying up, look at the VIX, look at the volatility that's happening in these markets, that some are saying that the Smoot-Hawley tariffs caused the Great Depression, though frankly, I disagree. So will these tariffs that Trump has put on create the next depression? And how do you fight that? Well, let's talk about this. Because the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act was signed into law in June of 1930, soon after the 1929 Black Tuesday markets plunged. It was positioned as protecting domestic industry and particularly farming, but it sparked a global trade war and deepened the Great Depression. Didn't start it, but it definitely deepened it. Imports fell by 2/3 and U.S. exports saw similar declines. What actually caused the Great Depression was the flood of new money created by the Federal Reserve. And that started in 1913, and the transition to a consumer-driven economy. And so therefore they had credit for the first time, easy unsecured credit. So stock markets worked great with margin debt soaring as markets went up to extremely overvalued levels, just like now. But once the credit dried up, which is what we're also seeing right now, valuations suddenly, where they didn't matter, now they mattered. And the world entered the Great Depression. And that really was a transfer of wealth, because the industrialists that knew this was a paper market, they sold into the new public that had access to all of this credit. And it was after enough of that risk had been transferred, that's when the markets crashed. And that's why I say the Smoot-Hawley did not cause the depression, but let me tell you, it did create major inflation, and so it made it worse and longer. So have President Trump's tariffs tip the world into the next Great Depression? We're going to see, but I can tell you for an absolute fact, I was there on Black Monday in 1987. And with markets across the board entering into bear markets, frankly, everything is like trying to catch a falling knife. Should you buy the dip this time, as we have been told and taught to do, or run to safety? What does history tell us is the next most likely outcome? Easy credit and a rising stock market encourages risk-taking, FOMO, fear of missing out. And what that really does is it enables risk transfer from the sophisticated few, like the elites, just like in 1929, to the many, to the hopeful public. But hopium does not really work very well now, does it? All that really did is enable the few to transfer the risk to the many. And then the many typically get to watch their wealth evaporate. A rising stock market could also blind the public to the transition from a gold commodity-backed money to a debt paper-backed money, just like in the 30s. Today, we're transitioning from the debt paper money into a digital surveillance money, as long as we allow it. But if we can come together in global community and just 3% of the population position into physical gold and silver, then I believe we have an opportunity to influence the next fiat money system so that it has sound money beneath it. It's a much more fair system. But to justify the transition, I'm sorry, then, like now, a big crisis is required. The Great Depression was a great excuse to do all sorts of things, though the biggest one was the overt confiscation. And I don't really think that it's a coincidence that, what did you have? You had a market crash, you had the tariffs put in place, and after that, you had the gold confiscation. Sound money gold was confiscated from the public in 1933. In 1934, there was a 69% overnight revaluation of dollars to gold. Good thing Treasury Secretary Wooden and others in the know could continue to hold and accumulate tangible pre-33 gold coins. But what did the public have to protect their wealth when they took all the gold away? Nothing. And that's where we are right now. We have nothing to protect our wealth except we can position back into physical gold and silver. So those in the know continue to hold and actually accumulate pre-33 gold coins. But others flew to gold mining stocks, which seriously outperformed the Dow, but it was frankly the only way to buy gold back then. And I think it's very interesting that in 1932, there was a rapid rise in gold mining stocks before the 1933 confiscation. Interesting. Do you think that that was just a coincidence? Or did those in the know get into position ahead of the 1933 gold confiscation? We're never really going to know the answer to that. It's just a thought. But I see this kind of behavior over and over and over again. That's why understanding the patterns are so critically important, because it gives us, the public, a heads up to what's the next most likely outcome. We don't have to wait until it's too late to do anything. So how are the 2025 President Trump tariffs different than the 1930 Smoot-Hawley tariffs? And what do the patterns tell us to do? Frankly, they want us to think this time is different. Time will tell if that's true. But there do seem to be so many parallels right up front. Yet there is one key difference. 1913 through 1933 was the beginning of this paper money fiat system. moving the public from directly holding sound money with a tool to take power back. Because if you did not like what the government or the central banks were doing, you could walk in with one, either a gold certificate or a Federal Reserve note, and walk out with the gold, creating the restriction. But the reality is gold is above all central banks and governments because it cannot be inflated away. There's thousands of years of history that prove that, and that's just because it has the broadest base of functionality and the broadest base of demand. But a government system that we have, which is fiat, where inflation is part of the design, it's baked into the system. Now look, in 2008, if you've been watching me for a while, you know that there's not one little teeny weeny doubt in my mind that the system actually died in 2008. And the current fiat money system was put on life support with lots and lots of hopium that they became addicted to with all of this money printing. But we are now at the end of this. And so more money printing, it's like pushing on a string. It doesn't have the same kind of impact. In 2025, we are very likely near the end of the system. And while everybody wants to know the exact moment, nobody really is going to know that. But we are transitioning into a new system. Do you want to have a say in it? Because I do. I want it to be more fair for my children, my grandchildren, and we know we need that big crisis. Is that what the 2025 tariffs are bringing in? Because I think that no matter what, quite frankly, I think the damage, or a lot of the damage, has already been done. But we know that desperate governments do desperate things. Is it just a coincidence that the credit bubble that popped in 1929 led to global tariff wars that began in 1930? And did that justify the gold confiscation in 33? What are we looking at now? Global central banks show us that gold is global sound money. Do you really think, with how quickly this administration execute, do you really think that there will be zero unintended consequences? Please. When one system dies, another is always born. Gold is your bridge to get you from this one system into the second system with your purchasing power intact. That's the whole point. So you want to be sure to watch on this coming Saturday the video that we did on stable coins, because, I think it's just a Trojan horse. You can have your own opinion, but you absolutely want to watch that. I think it's one of the most important videos that I've done lately. And you want to watch all of the videos because there's so much that's going on. And frankly, how many times can you be lied to when you do not know the truth? Well, let's uncover those lies so that you can actually make educated choices that puts your best interest first. So make sure that you subscribe, give us a thumbs up. Let's have this conversation, and make sure also that you're with us every Tuesday at noon Mountain Standard Time for an open Q&A, question and answer. Bring any of your questions. You don't even have to be nice, but just bring them so we can start and continue this dialogue that enables you to have you and your family be in the best possible position. Because there is not one little doubt in my mind that while one person can't really do very much, together we can make a positive impact on the world. What a concept. And until next we meet, please be safe out there. Bye-bye.